We're taking a different path today on this episode. We're talking with a coach who helps his clients integrate their professional and spiritual selves. All this and more coming up on this episode of The Perfect Route. Welcome to the show, listeners and viewers. I am so pleased to have Rich Strilowich with me today. How are you doing, Rich?
I'm doing great, Bill. It's wonderful to be here today.
Great to have you here. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. When we spoke earlier, I am a corporate sage spiritual coach. And, many people don't think that corporate and spirituality go together. In fact, I did not for a very, very long time until a few years ago, as I've been on the spiritual path, integrating my corporate career with spirituality. So, a little bit about myself, I have been in the corporate world for 40 plus years, mostly in the IT industry, moving up from computer science up into my career in IT project program management, people management, HR, a director owning a P&L as part of the business in later 30 years within IBM. And what goes with all of that is the usual challenges and stress in a corporate type of environment with all the things that you have to do around performance improvement and cost reduction and resource actions that you need to take and managing global teams all around the world. So I've seen quite a bit over my 40 plus years. And to balance that out on the other side, I've been on I would call it a conscious spiritual journey for 30 plus years,
Hmm.
walking both worlds. And I say I didn't always know I was on a spiritual path until in hindsight, I was able to see things that were going on for me. And the spiritual path has led me into numerous different things. It first started out when I said I didn't even know I was on a spiritual path. It started out with a lot of inner discontent in what I was doing in my job. Like things shouldn't be this hard and a real drive and desire for constant self-improvement. I was reading every self-help book out there and spiritual book out there looking for the magic pill that I would get the aha of, okay, this is it. And many other things I've studied, saints, sages, masters of both the East and the West. I do have more of a Christian background myself, along with going through energy healing training and core energetics, body-centered psychotherapy training and vision quests and meditation retreats. And, lastly, spending the last 10 years about with a spiritual advisor who's really helped me to sort of bring it all together here. So I think I'll take a breath here. That was a lot to say in one question, and I'm sure we're going to unpack a little bit more of that as we go along.
Yeah, there is a lot to unpack there because you have taken an unusual path. As a executive and business coach, I tend to focus on productivity, teamwork,
Mhm.
communication, more of the conventional approach towards being a trusted advisor in comparison to you who's taken, I think it's a necessary approach. I don't want to call it unusual. I want to say that it's just not as well explored as traditional forms of coaching.
Yes. What I would say is the types of things that you're doing is absolutely necessary. To me, in my world, it's a both and. We're needing for spirituality to be work in the corporate world first, it's got to be practical.
Hmm.
And, with that, it's not about lighting candles and burning incense, although it could be if that's your nature, if that's what you're drawn to. But mostly I think where we first need to start is defining what is spirituality? What does it mean in the corporate world? Because I've talked to many people and it can mean many, many different things. So to net it out, essentially spirituality it's about our relationship to source, or maybe you might, whatever word you call God or the universe or source or Allah or whatever, matches your religious tradition or spiritual approach. It's about our relationship with that. I believe it's a Hindu analogy that likens God to the infinite cosmic ocean of the complete divinity of everything that there is. and we are individuated waves on top of that ocean. And so spirituality is about the relationship of the wave to the ocean and the spiritual path over time, where the ocean starts to infuse you as the wave with its qualities, such as a deep levels of deep inner peace that already exists within us. It might be covered over,
Hmm.
and contentment and stillness. And those actually do translate into skills that are effective in the corporate world. But if you're on this journey, then you are naturally asking the deep questions. Who am I? And the mystics and saints have been asking those questions for millennia, and some have gone insane trying to answer them, and some of them found the deepest sense of inner peace into who they are. And so you're seeking a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in life, and what is it all about? And I can definitely tell you from the executives and people I coach on this path, I've found many times people are really struggling with the challenges and the intensity and the anxiety and the constant pressure that's going on these days. And sometimes I've talked to an executive who just got the promotion to the next level of goal, and they started asking, is this?
Hmm.
And the answer is yes, it is it, because there's a deeper purpose and meaning to who you truly are at your foundational level that can infuse into what you're doing right now, into purpose and meaning in your corporate world. Because spirituality is not separate. It's not something you do to go on a retreat. It's who you are right now and what's occurring in your life right now.
Hmm.
So again, let me take another break here. A lot to
Okay.
unpack again.
Yeah, and thanks for that. It's a different side of a question that I like to ask in coaching about where you are right now, because my job as a trusted advisor is to help people become the leader that they are faster than they could on their own. But in a spiritual quest, sometimes speed is not what we seek. Enlightenment now makes a great bumper sticker, but in practice, it's not practical.
Correct. And it can be practical. And I don't want to come across and say, you can come to me as as a corporate sage coach, and in 16 weeks you're going to be whatever this thing is called enlightenment.
Okay.
Because it's probably there's a lifelong path of the spiritual path, and there's a different premise to it, which is ultimately says life is not a problem to be solved, that I can plan step by step to grow along that path. It's a mystery to be lived.
Mm,
It completely puts the whole paradigm upside down. And that mystery to be lived, I've also called it the pathless path. And I love what Joseph Campbell has to say.
mhm.
He says, if you can see the path clearly in front of you, you know it's not your path.
And
Because
I love quoting Campbell
uh,
in the work that I do. The hero's journey is part of what I do in coaching, and for some reason I had forgotten that Campbell quote.
I love it. And then he goes on to say, our path is only shown to us one step at a time. And I sort of add on to him saying, sometimes it's as we are in mid step going down, hoping the path rises up to us.
Hmm. It and it's in executive and business coaching, it's our work is framed by time. My typical engagement might be 12 to 18 months.
Mhm.
If it goes longer, that's great, because clients will need a trusted advisor for as long as they feel they need one. In a spiritual quest, we're answering questions that if you brought them to a board of directors, unless it's a very progressive minded company, the board might flip and say, "What are you talking about?"
Absolutely. Board of directors and companies, by nature of how they're designed, are not structured to be themselves going on a spiritual journey and spiritual path. The spiritual journey is a individual, very personal inquiry journey for only yourself. So nobody knows you're going on it. Nobody knew that I was on a spiritual journey, except for a few close, confident kinds of friends that I had who I was telling about this. And the other thing I wanted to add about spirituality, in terms of what it is, Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin says, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mhm.
And so that means spirit, there's something more than this flesh and blood and bones and everything else about me as a human being. There's something beyond me. It typically means we have some sort of belief ourselves in a higher power. And as I said, God or source or something like that. And then the question in the corporate world, well, how does that apply? And the first part of it is, as I just said, everybody is already spiritual, but not everyone is called. So it's okay if you're not called, if your path seems to be, I want to go up the corporate ladder and achieve whatever it takes and takes me on my path as far as it does. That's okay if you don't want to go on an inner journey.
Mhm.
But if you are called, and again, not everyone knows that you're called. I did not in the beginning. It took me a while to figure that out. And things started lining up for me to show me, oh, here's this workshop that I feel aligned to taking. And here's this Energy Young program. This seemed really cool. I want to go do that. It wasn't for a while that I actually realized I didn't find a spiritual path. It found me, because this is for Rich, this was my path uniquely for me, as everyone else is on their own path. But if you're feeling that inner discontent, like I said, later on, I learned that inner discontent is how the calling showed up for me, that I was actually going down this path. And that later on, I finally put it together. There's a Trappist monk named Father Thomas Keating. He says, the spiritual journey does not require us to go anywhere because God is already with us and in us, living his life through us in every moment. And boom, I saw that quote and the aha.
Mm.
Oh, I was treating spirituality as out there, and I finally realized I was to escape. I wanted to go on a meditation retreat so that I could recharge, so I could gain a sense of inner peace, so many other qualities. But the second I came back into the office door, I left my spirituality at the door.
Mhm.
And that part around, doesn't require us to go on because God's already with us and in us already says right now what's happening. There's no separation between my external life and the corporate world. What's happening right now is my spiritual path. And it was a deeper process then with the spiritual advisor who helped me to realize there's a part of life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. All the people, places, things, events, circumstances, good and bad, when I had to lay off 28 people over a period of time, situation that was coming to me for my own spiritual growth that I never could have anticipated or planned. Many of the people who I laid off came to me and said they found better jobs. Some of them came and said, well, it was going to happen anyway. At least I had a manager who could do it with compassion. Yes, I had to read the corporate script, right, doing it, but at least they had someone who was treating them with compassion.
Mhm.
And all of that I've personally seen in my own growth of all the things that I've had to do some challenging ways, actually end up being a high performer in the company. And I didn't plan for it. It just started to become naturally who I am.
And integrating our professional practice with our spiritual self is something of a flip for people. If we look at spirituality as an add on to our life, it doesn't necessarily work. Life is if I get you right, our human life is just an add on to our spiritual life.
They're fully integrated. They're one
Okay.
and the same. Yes,
Okay. So they're co-equal.
that's right. They're
Okay.
blended. They're completely blended together like this.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And I don't know a lot of coaches who take this approach, which is one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on to the program, because you are very forward about how you think and what your intent is with colleagues, peers, and clients. It leads me to another question and that is, should we as coaches even think of the people we advise as clients or as partners on a journey?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. And let me explain that a little bit more.
Okay.
of course, as I said, in the definitions that I used, spirituality, we are spirit already, then we're in relationship to others here. And of course, in some form or fashion, we are both partners on a journey. Yeah, as a coach, I have evolved over time on my own spiritual quest and path that's just been right for me. And you've probably seen yourself as an executive coach learn new things at just the right time for you to make your own coaching, taking it to a whole nother level. And much of it could be very, maybe you've learned 360 assessments or other kinds of assessments that are useful in executive coaching, and other kinds of things in leadership development or other things that are useful for coaching. But then there's probably stuff that you learned which was more internal and personal to yourself. And now you brought more of yourself of that without even thinking of it into your own executive coaching relationships.
That is an interesting thing to consider. And I've always thought that I'd bring in a fair amount of myself
Mm.
into the coaching relationship, partly because I'm believe that we bring our whole self into our work. When I was a full-time employee, I I was not one for telling myself, okay, we're going to leave this, that, and the other thing in the car and just focus on the professional side at work.
Mhm.
It's all as you put it, the spiritual and professional lives are co-equal, and
Absolutely.
I I would think that they can, thrive on each other.
They most definitely they can. I'll give you an example of how I work with people who are open to this. Again, many times the people that I've worked with in the corporate world, many don't know they're even on a spiritual journey, but they're open to it. They're open to self-improvement, maybe spiritual books, maybe they take a class in yoga. They're already some form of spiritual seeker. And again, for me, it was the inner discontent of there's gotta be they can't be this way. There's gotta be something better than this without how challenging and difficult it was for me. What I learned was over time was a model of deepening spirituality, and I call it the four filters to look through life. I should say first before that is spiritual practices are important as you're going through this path. Something like meditation, prayer, contemplation, something that meditation takes you into an experience of inner peace, and you can hold that inner peace for a certain amount of time. The more I've meditated, the more I've been able to maintain a level of inner peace no matter what's being thrown at me. Yes, I get thrown off the horse every so often, but I recover a whole lot faster. So there's some principles that I call four filters. One is surrender, and that is letting God handle what God needs to handle, the outcomes. It doesn't mean not doing things. St. Augustine says, work as if everything was up to me, pray and let go of the outcomes as if everything's up to God, for which it really is. And that brings a level of inner peace. The serenity prayer is an example, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. Next is faith. And faith is not something that I can simply turn on the switch and say, oh, I got instant faith. But faith is ultimately the essence of knowing that everything's occurring is happening for my own good, even the hard things. And I have to say, some of the hard things in my life have ultimately shown up to me years later, showing me that actually was a good thing for me to happen in my life. And I'll come back to that in a moment. And then there's patience. Sometimes things just are going to take the amount of time they're going to take, no matter how hard you tried. I was a project manager, and I had to plan my work and work my plan. And many times I hit my numbers, but sometimes things showed up of unexpected risk or issues that nobody could have predicted that caused a 3-month delay in the project. And, I still had to tell executives, here's what's going on. And you know what happened? At the end of 3 months, when we were 3 months late, the world didn't fall apart.
Mhm.
But the stress on me that I put on myself almost made it feel like the world fell apart. I wish I knew to let go of that stress to embrace a deeper level of inner peace, because my own thinking will be clearer in the process. So there's patience, and then the last is acceptance. And acceptance is accepting what is. Those four together, deepening those brings you a deeper level of inner peace, contentment, inner fulfillment, and you can't create a project plan to actually grow those. The experiences that come to you in your life are brought to us for us to help us grow.
Hmm.
And I call that grace. And there's a beautiful definition of grace by Cheryl Richardson, who's a coaching thought leader. She's one of the first International Coaching Federation presidents. It says, over time, you recognize that a benevolent force of energy has been available to guide and direct your life all along. I call this energy the unmistakable touches of grace. Grace leads us to the exact events and experiences we need exactly the right time. So I coach people now to recognize in their corporate world, your boss tells you, I need you to update this, this business case, and you got 2 hours to do it. Recognizing that this coaching them around taking that to a deeper level and recognizing that's coming to them for their spiritual growth. If we have a purpose and meaning that we can tie to events that come to us, we can actually handle most anything that does come to us. Viktor Frankl in the book Meaning Man's Search for Meaning is a clear example of someone who went through the Holocaust experience and tied that experience to, they will never break my ability to choose my own inner state. All of that, he had tied that experience to a very deep inner purpose and meaning.
And let's dig into that a bit in terms of ability and our inner selves, because managers and executives are usually assessed based on their ability.
Right.
They're promoted in part because not only do they have ability, but they've got the capability to do more. But sometimes more is not a good thing. I mean, I've seen plenty of people be promoted into positions that they eventually found themselves either unsuited for, or the position itself was unsatisfying. And I've been through that myself. It's,
Yes.
that when you, and I'm searching for the words here, when you decide that it's better to sacrifice some of your spiritual self for material gain, that kind of compromise, it just leads to, a vicious cycle, which is a hard thing to necessarily tell a coaching client or a
Mhm.
peer that desperately wants that promotion, or
Right.
that they desperately want recognition
Yes.
for what they do.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be better if we were satisfied with the successful integration of our spiritual and professional lives, and instead of sacrificing one for the other?
This is a really great question, and it's actually a challenging one to try and answer.
Right.
So I'll attempt this. So when I was going through the path, I think I was using the words that you were also doing here, and that the corporate path, corporate career, and going up the ladder brings me to a certain place that may or may not bring me satisfaction. In that experience and process, I probably in tying my identity to who I am to something that's external to me, such as the title or the job title. And you might have been saying that when they finally got there, they weren't fully satisfied with that, or it wasn't what they were truly looking for, right? It's not down the spiritual journey. It doesn't mean you're still not going up that path. It means you're disconnecting more and more of tying your identity to what you're doing externally and more to who you are as a spirit, or tying it to your divinity within, so that now you're connected to a deeper perspective and foundation of who you really are.
Hmm.
And that's more of your purpose. You still might do that external job, or you might not. I usually ask people to stay in your current jobs for a while we're going through a coaching journey and process. Don't leave it yet, because sometimes the grass is greener on the other side elsewhere. It's not greener on somewhere else, right? Or maybe it is right for you to really look for something else. But for now, spirituality is right in front of you on your path, on your spiritual path, and looking at this opportunity as part of your spiritual growth. A real quick personal story, and this is the personal side, not the work side. Many years ago, my wife and I have twins, and when our 3.5-year-old daughter, all of a sudden, like within a 2-week time period, she's regressed into severe autism. She
Hmm.
completely stopped talking. She was spinning around and spent her days temper tantruming. We started bringing her to many This is one of the worst experiences that you could ever a parent could ever go through. And hearing doctors say, prepare for the rest of your life of a hard, challenging, difficult situation like this. She may never talk ever again. Well, first things first is when this started happening, I was on the spiritual path. I was going through a therapy training program and I needed to deal with grief. Well, how perfect, if this was going to be happening, how perfect is it that I was in a therapy program surrounded with therapists and classmate colleagues and entire school to hold me to go through that challenging process. And I call them human angels, started showing up in our life that I never could have planned for and expected to tell us that doctor that just told you she'll never talk, they don't know what they're talking about. And here's where we want to really take you to, and other therapies that are going to be helpful. And many, many other things have happened over the years. She's 23 years old. She talks like crazy. She's going to live with us a very long time. She's affectionate. She is happy. And she broke my heart somewhere along the way,
Mm.
where I can say today, her middle name fits her, which is Grace. And I wouldn't want her to be any other way. And God's gift was her to me to take care of. And she's been my teacher more than anything. She was my spiritual path that I never could have planned. It looked like the worst thing in the world happening here. So I'm using that as an analogy to your original comment, which I think I'm remembering it, about what about the manager
Hmm.
who gets to this role and coaching them, etc. And I just want to tie that to who's to say where they're at isn't spiritual and part of
Mm.
faith says it's coming to you to support you. And I want to bring it back to everything is happening all at once here. Yes, you're on the spiritual path, integrating this into all the things you're doing in your in your career, such as maybe you're coaching them at the same time of all the executive kinds of things that they need to be doing, that you do with them as an executive coach, and the spiritual path is occurring at the same time. Is that making sense? I hope that landed in making sense.
It makes a lot of sense because we're walking our path of spiritual mystery,
Hmm.
and at the same time that we're as professionals we're supposed to be providing certainty, and
Right.
there's that dichotomy there which can be difficult to navigate because are there executives who out there who would be content in hearing from a direct report, let's see how this works out? No, we're beholden to stockholders or owners or venture capitalists to provide, economic returns
Yeah, that's right.
primarily.
That's right. And you're
But
not
there's
going to give that up
right.
on the spiritual path. And in fact, one of the things I also hear from people is saying, well, isn't spirituality going to make me a soft leader? And, the answer is actually not. When I was told the story with my daughter, it actually helped me grow skills in myself to become a firmer leader because I had to fight in an advocacy kind of way for my daughter.
Hmm.
And those same skills of fighting are many of the same ones that I needed to use in my corporate job. I've got my spiritual corporate battle scars to prove it in some of the battles I would need to be in, especially trying to protect some people and large number of people I needed to lay off at one point in time, or other kinds of things I need to do in the business. But it was based off of, again, it's a wholly completely different model. I was able to surrender and let it go that these battles are needing to happen, and I'm able to confront somebody and still have an open heart, knowing that we are both placed exactly where we're supposed to be with each other.
That this has been a fascinating conversation, and I encourage our listeners and viewers who want to delve deeper into this balance, this integration of the spiritual life with the professional life, to contact Rich. What's a good way to get a hold of you?
Great. So my website is www.stillpointcoach, STILLPOINT coach.com. You can email me at rich.strilowich, STRILOWICH, at protonmail.com. I have also written a book. It's in back of me. It's called The Corporate Sage, Gracefully Integrating Spirituality for Authentic Leadership. And authentic leadership means the essence of core of who we are and being a leader from who you are already within that, which is spirit, aligned with your unique specific nature. It takes Harvard Business Review's definition of our authentic leader, integrates it, and adds your own unique spirituality on top of it. So, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. One of my favorite things to do is I love to have spiritual conversations with people, and also just conversations if you're curious about how to integrate spirituality into your current career. On my website, you'll see a button that says book a call. Even if you're just curious and want to have a conversation with that, I encourage you to contact me and join me, and love to have a talk with
Well, thank you for sharing your perspective. And it's certainly been informative for me talking with you about the spiritual side, in integrating it with our professional selves. To be honest, it's something that I haven't considered very much over the last few years, but I'm definitely am actively thinking about this now. And I know I'll be reaching out to you, Rich, for some advice and support as I trod down this new path that is not all that clear to me, but it's showing itself.
you.
So
Fabulous. And you're not alone. Most people don't, especially in the corporate world, have never considered or thought that your corporate career is your spiritual path. And it took me, like I said, 40 plus years, the last 5 or 8 years, I finally started getting it. I walked that path. And now my journey is coaching people to shorten that time frame and integrate it now into who they are. So it's
indeed.
rather common, and I didn't get it for a long time myself.
I understand. I understand. And hopefully we will all find our own paths as well. But Rich Strilowich, I wanted to thank you for being part of the Perfect Route today. And for our viewers and listeners, thanks for being on this part of the journey with us. And I'll see you again on another episode soon. Take care.
Thank you, Bill.